Takes the snap. He'll hand it to James White. Working the right side. Trying to turn it back. Slips through. 35. Cuts left mid. White 45-50. 45-40. Down the left side 30. 20. 10. 5. Touchdown Wisconsin. James White 69 yards.
We are going to play a little game of pick'em as a way of getting ready for the showdown between Nebraska and Wisconsin. We've divided the game into 5 separate categories. Chris and Jerry will tell you who they think has the advantage in each one of them. And we start with the run game, an area where Nebraska, of course, as we know, has been great. At least 200 yards on the ground in 10 of their 12 games. The Badgers, meanwhile, also running it well, though less consistently than normal. Still better than 212 yards per game for them. Defensively, the Huskers are much weaker against the run than the pass, while the Badgers are holding opponents to 3.4 yards per carry. That is second best in the Big Ten. So who has the edge, guys?
Well, I think when you look at it, Coach, for me, it's Nebraska. This isn't a pedestrian run game. Now, granted, Wisconsin is good at stopping the run with those linebackers and the big guys up front, Allen and Hemer. But when you look at it, Nebraska, they're 8th in the country in terms of rushing yards. Taylor Martinez can crease you at any moment. In the running backs, Amir Abdullah, Burkhead's got fresh legs because he only had 63 carries this season. So the edge for me goes to Nebraska.
I'm going to go with Wisconsin. You know, Chris, if you look at just conference play, Wisconsin's second in the conference in rushing yards, over 250 yards per game. If you look at just conference games, Monty Ball leads the conference in rushing. Then you look at the pass game. Wisconsin's not going to throw it a bunch. And so the opportunities for Monte are going to be tremendous. And I think that's why they may have an edge. Now, if you go back to the first Nebraska game, Wisconsin had under 100 yards. But if you go to the Ohio State game, Wisconsin had over 200 yards rushing. Their attack's going to have to look more like the one against Ohio State than it looked against the first game against Nebraska.
Keep in mind, too, Dave, before we go back, is that Wisconsin and that Nebraska wears you down. So at the end of the game, you get those attrition plays and big pops. Look for the leaky outs.
I will definitely be looking for the leaky outs. If there's anything I'm looking for, it'll be the leaky outs. Okay, so we've got one apiece at this point. Let's get ourselves now into the pass game. And here, Nebraska, again, Taylor Martinez has been great, throwing 21 TD passes. It's been kind of a hodgepodge for Wisconsin. As we know, 3 different starters, just 108th nationally in passing offense. Defensively, the Huskers are the only team in the nation holding opponents under 50% completion rate, while the Badgers have held 2 straight opponents to season lows in passing yards. Jerry?
Well, Chris, I don't know that you're going to disagree with me, but I'm going to take Nebraska on this, but here's why I'm going to take it. You look at the big picture. Nebraska has improved their passing game, mostly because Taylor Martinez has improved their passing game. They've thrown the ball more this year than Wisconsin has. And then if you look at Wisconsin's defense, there's 3 major parts to the Nebraska offense. Tailback run, quarterback run, and pass game. I think Wisconsin starts their defense by stopping the quarterback run and the running back run. And the third thing is the pass game. I think Nebraska will have more opportunities to do well in the pass game.
What's interesting, though, is I think we undervalue Wisconsin's defense when you look at it. But I, too, agree in that Nebraska is going to have the more effective pass games. When you look at it, Taylor Martinez, almost 2,500 yards in the air this season. And when you look at Wisconsin, conversely, Kurt Phillips, 3 starts. Will he be ready for the bright lights of Indy? And then you got a wide receiver, their #1 target, Abradaris, a little banged up. Where is the production going to come from, Dave?
All right, so 2 votes for the Huskers there. We have Chris going with Wisconsin twice to this point, or Nebraska twice, I should say, to this point. Jerry, 1 Wisconsin, 1 Nebraska. As we move to the special teams now, and this is an area where obviously there's so many factors, but Wisconsin has a glaring issue, and that is field goal kicking, converting less than 59%. That is worst in the Big Ten. The Huskers, meanwhile, have Brett Maher, first-team All-Big Ten kicker, also the second-team punter. So factors to consider there. C-Mart, what say you?
Well, Maher is one of the best in the country when you look at it. And I think Nebraska here, easily. Special teams, particularly if they can hold on to some of the balls in the punt return game. We know that's been an issue and an epidemic, but you got to like Maher. He has a lot of pop, a lot of sizzle in that leg. It could come down to a field goal.
I'm going to go with Wisconsin, not for any stat, but because of the possibility of big plays. Nebraska has muffed 5 punts, so there's a chance for a big play. Plus, Wisconsin's the underdog in this game. Why wouldn't they be more freewheeling in the kick game? Fakes, surprise on kicks, all those type of things, Rever. That's the way I see it.
All right, good call, particularly on those muff punts, but a lot of them for Nebraska this year. So Chris is still all Nebraska. Gerry, meanwhile, seems to be leaning a little bit Wisconsin. Let's go to big plays now. And we talked about this a couple weeks ago when we did this. Big plays could be anything from explosion plays to turnovers to penalties. Huskers have had 70 plays of 20 or more yards, the most in the Big Ten, but they're also 10th in the Big Ten in turnover margin. Badgers tied for the conference low, just 11 lost turnovers. They're also the least penalized team in the Big Ten, Chris.
Well, when you look at it, guys, sometimes when I go to a club, I try and name drop to get in. So let me name drop a few guys for you. Kenny Bell, Taylor Martinez, Amir Abdullah, Damian Stafford, Eric Martin. I mean, these guys can change the game in the blink of an eye, and I think it's just too much talent. Throwing Jamal Turner, elite speed, just way too many playmakers, Gerry.
I can't drop any names, see, Mark, of course, I don't go to clubs. But again, I go back to the Nebraska offense. They have 3 chances for big plays, and that's why I think Nebraska wins this one. They can get a big run out of Abdullah or Burkhead. They can get a big run out of Taylor Martinez, or they can get a big pass out of Taylor Martinez and Kenny Bell and all the other receivers. More opportunities for Nebraska to have big plays, Rever.
All right, so we take a look at where it stands right now. We see another Nebraska for Chris. Gerry, 2 Nebraskas, 2 Wisconsins. I leave it up to you guys now to define anything that we haven't gone over specifically, the intangibles. What are we leaving out here that may sway the balance, Coach?
Well, to me, it's 1999, the last time that Nebraska won a championship. I think the fans in Lincoln often remind the Nebraska team that. I think the fact that it's the 2nd year in the Big Ten and they want to make a mark. But when you look at the micro, Chris, this Nebraska team has come back from a bunch of games where they're behind. That gives a team like this in a championship situation, it gives them tremendous confidence that no matter what happens during the game, we can win it.
But I like the team that's battle-tested and who's been there a year ago, and that's why I like Wisconsin here. And that's a big mark for me. And then I think Brett Bielema is a great motivating coach. So you can hear it now. He's going to tell his guys all week that it's us against the world mentality. He is going to pop that speech into their heads, and I think they will use that as motivation. I think they're going to come fired up. I think that's where they have those intangibles. Interesting to see.
All right, so everything tangible in C-Mart's mind goes to the Huskers. Intangibles, though, going to Wisconsin. Gerry, as you can see, 3-2 in favor of Nebraska. This was fun. Let's go kind of from these units, though, into an X factor. One player to watch for both of you. And C-Mart, who is that player for you?
It is absolutely Kenny Bell. I think he is extraordinary. He and Allen Robinson were the 2 best wide receivers in the conference this year, and it isn't even close, folks. When you look at it, he averages 18 yards a catch. He is a dynamic receiver that strikes fear in defensive backs, Coach. He stacks him, gets on top, runs routes cleanly, and can catch the ball. And I believe that he will make the big play that will win the game against Wisconsin. He is that good.
C-Mart, I'll see your absolutely and raise you an absolutely. How about Kurt Phillips? Now, remember, Kurt Phillips is the 3rd quarterback that has started for Wisconsin this year. And when he first started out, they could protect him with the run game. He didn't have to do a bunch of pass game. There's no way Wisconsin can go in against Nebraska and be one-dimensional. Kurt Phillips, especially with a banged-up Jared Abadaris, we don't even know where they're going to be, what they're going to be like on the flank, Chris. So I think it's got to be Kurt Phillips' best game. But not only his best game, he's going to have to do some things, Chris, that he hasn't done yet this year, and that's going to involve things in the pass game, big plays in the pass game.
Will he be a big moment killer? That remains to be seen.